Hello, everyone. This is Paula Harris again. And what I'd like to do is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, but have not had an opportunity because we're also good friends. I would like to just gab and talk to Shanelle Schanz, who is the granddaughter of Kenneth Arnold. And before I even start to talk to Shanelle, uh, most of the things that have happened to me in my life are happened by coincidence. I have not planned them. They just, they kind of fall in my lap. So I wonder about my career. This is one of the things that happened. I was on the George and Nuri Coast to Coast show, and Shanelle heard me and she tried to get through to me. And when George Nuri heard she was the granddaughter of Kenneth Arnold, he took her number right away. But what happens with me as an investigator, I went after her right away because when you're doing stories, for instance, like on her grandfather, I need to go to the source. I need to go to the closest relative. I need to talk to the people that knew him. So Shanelle and I developed a really good relationship, and she convinced her mother, Kim Arnold, who's in James Fox's The Phenomena, to come forth and give me an interview. What ended up happening, because of the amount of stress that the Arnold family has had since 1947, Kim has backed off somewhat, but I did the only interview with Kim Arnold that's out there, and it was for Open Minds magazine. Open Minds was the magazine that my former boss Mauricio Bayata was the head of in the 2000s, and it was out of Phoenix, Arizona. So Kim Arnold, Shanelle's mother, came forth and said some things and really told some stories that I'd like to talk more about, because it is not simply that Kenneth Arnold saw these UFOs over Mount Rainier. There's so much to the background here. So Shanelle, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, the fact that you're a mom, and what you do.
Well, my college career just recently ended, but I've been studying philosophy for the past 4 years at a college here in Boise, Idaho. And my mother inherited my grandfather Kenneth Arnold's estate, and with that, all the interesting things that came along with that, like his files and lots of stories to be told of how famous my grandfather was growing up. And he died when I was turning 8, so I spent time with him, here in town for years. But, before he died, he kind of sat me down and told me 4 things. And I can just remember like 2 things, like don't trust the government, think for yourself. And I was thinking, why is he telling me this? Just sitting there when he was discussing that with me when I was like 7. And he ended up dying from complications from cancer in Seattle in 1984, and luckily all of his daughters were there around him when he died. But growing up is when I realized how famous my grandfather was in 1947. How everybody knew who he was, and before this movie, The Phenomenon, was filmed, they had a library special on my grandfather that I went and saw, and most of the people were older people, like not any young people remember who he was, but like the older people do, they remember. And so like he's been on, different shows on the TV and whatnot, but nothing really has been focused on our family. Or
Why did you reach out to me on George and Nuri Coast to Coast?
it was the anniversary of Roswell, and yep, I think it had to be 2007, Paula. I would think if it was, how many years would that be? Was it the 70th or
Wow.
the 60th? 2007, so 70th anniversary. That's right. It was the 70th anniversary of his sighting, but also of Roswell. And that's what everybody was talking about, was Roswell. And I was like, what
So
about
you
my
decided,
grandfather?
you decided, let me talk about my grandfather because he came
I
before
know.
that. Yeah. So
Yeah.
because the important thing about your grandfather, though, in 1947, is that he coined the term flying saucer.
Yeah. He never patented that name, but that name is used in so many different ways nowadays. Flying saucer restaurants, It's, the main word to describe UFOs besides saying UFO, flying saucer.
Yeah, and so, but you did something good though, Shanelle, because your reasoning was my grandfather is part of history. And
Oh,
so,
definitely. No, no. Yeah. I released something to a museum just because I wanted it in a museum because my mom, she just doesn't want to share what she has very often. And I feel like I'm going to be the one, uh, sharing all the information eventually, you know, when it's passed on down to me. But nobody else in the family really wants to be too public about it. I did have an aunt that died recently, and I kind of wanted to talk about something odd that happened with her. Can I talk right now about what happened with my aunt after she died?
okay, the reason why Chanel is speaking to me like this is because I had asked her about her grandmother who was very sensitive. She was almost psychic, sometimes like medium type psychic. So Chanel, who herself is sensitive, notices these things. And the fact that Kenneth Arnold is married to somebody that sensitive and it could come down in the family means that not only is the nuts and bolts ufology important, but all the paranormal stuff that happens around that is important. And when Chanel said that her mother Kim saw a license plate with like Kiska, which is not normal,
No.
it is a way, and I picked this up as an investigator, it is a way of getting a message from the grave because it's not normal. I mean, the license plate is in front of her, and the tragedy was that this material was lost. The material is lost to history, so we're looking at history. So your mom sees this license plate that has Kisk on it. She follows the lady to the Mexican restaurant, and then what happened?
She went in and had a meal just in the restaurant, said it was the best Mexican restaurant ever. But she had just got the stuff in the mail and she found this car that the license plate was Kiska on it, said Kiska on it, and that's a very rare name. And my aunt Kiska, had passed away. So she felt like it was my aunt Kiska sending her a message that she deserved the books and the memoirs out of everyone in the family. My mom has been able to, not only did she inherit everything, she's been able to hold on to things. And with some other family members, they've lost, memoirs and things of sentimental value. And
to stop you this story, which has the paranormal, your mother following this car with the Kiska license plate. What your mom figured out then, and then because you're so plugged in, you were able to recover some of your grandfather's materials from the person that actually bought it.
Yeah, the lady had bought the storage, we think, and she probably tried to figure out how to sell what she had, and instead, contacted the family because she probably found out that there was no set of money put on anything of my grandfather's. There's no amount set for anything related to him or his sighting. When we took some stuff to Antiques Roadshow, my mom had the original airbrush drawing of my grandfather's flying saucer, and she had autographs that she had, and they couldn't give a price for any of the stuff that she had, and she was supposed to follow up with a specialist, but never did. So,
Okay, because what's happened, unfortunately, your father is history. You know, your father not only did that, he was interested in UFOs after that. He was involved with the Maury Island case and so forth. But people just remember Roswell. And they
yeah,
don't give the credit to your father, who was a pilot, who the government was very interested in. They don't give him credit. Now, going back to the paranormal, because I just want to
yeah, they
finish.
couldn't understand why so many people.
Yeah, going back to the paranormal, because I want to finish this little thing. Talk about your grandmother somewhat. I mean, what was your grandmother's name?
Doris,
Okay.
and she was from a family of 9 brothers and sisters, a very big family. And my grandmother was from my great grandmother was from Norway, so she had Norwegian, and then my great grandfather was from England. And just growing up, I guess the Norwegian way is to kind of be telepathic and think of the same thing that other people could be thinking about, which I kind of think is, something that we're evolving to. But growing up, I always knew that my grandmother talked to the masters, and I never really understood, and I still don't really understand who the masters might be. But it's a form of like communication with like higher higher beings.
But do you remember that when you were little that she
I
talked about?
remember my aunt coming over and them discussing about some message she had received, but I never really eavesdropped, out of respect for my elders. But you know, uh, it runs in the family, definitely. There's a lot of interesting things that run in the family. My mom's had experiences. I've had experiences. Um, and I think that, my grandfather had his experience because he was chosen because he was the only creditable witness at the time. Because I've heard that other people were seeing the same flying saucers, UFOs in the sky in summer, spring of 1947, but nobody was credible enough to be believed. And since he was a pilot, the media definitely took a lot of interest in his story because pilots are nuts and bolts. You got to report what you see for the security of our nation. He thought what he was seeing was high tech Russian, you know, uh, you know, you know, they were flying so fast. They were flying about 1,700 miles per hour. So he didn't know exactly how to explain what he was seeing, but he knew he had to report it. And anyhow,
Do you want to
he
tell what he did see, Shanelle? Because unfortunately, your microphone is still going a little bit like that, but I don't know how far back you can go. But can you say, because the people, not everybody knows that in 1947, your grandfather was flying, and what does he say he saw so they know?
um he saw 9 crafts flying about 1,700 miles per hour, and he was using 2 volcanoes as points on how fast they were flying, so he did clock them. But they were pulsating, and the middle of the crafts was beating like the heart. And he only saw him for about 3 minutes, and they were so fast and so incredible. He knew he had to report what he had just seen, and they were flying kind of in a pattern, like a V pattern, and then almost like, and then flying like saucers if you would skip them across the water. That's how he described them.
Did
Um,
did your grandfather have other sightings other than that one? Ones he didn't talk about because he had so much hassle with this.
yep, there's another one that happened in California that my mom found, that he had written down experience he had in California, and also experience he had in Oregon, and she's still trying to figure out if there's any way to find his other sightings he had. And she believed he had about 7 sightings altogether. And he was a pilot for most of his life, so um, he felt like his goal in life was to solve the mystery of him. And by the time he died, he just believed that there was a connection between the living and the dead. And and
That's the dimensional part. And you forgot something you told me about the lights going on and
yeah,
off.
they like,
When I was on George Nuri. Talk about that.
oh my gosh, yeah. When I called into Coast to Coast, it's really hard to get through. And when I finally got through, when you were on with George Nori, Paula, it was at like 3 in the morning, and the light in my bedroom was flickering. I felt like my grandfather was in the room, get me through. But what was weird that night is they had me on hold to talk to you. I got disconnected, called back and got through, and they're like, we wondered what happened to you, and how weird is that they even got back through. But I was just like, Roswell's 70th anniversary, and so was my grandfather's sighting. It was the 70th anniversary.
Yeah. So for the people that
And
are listening
I
to us,
got married.
yeah, go ahead.
I got married that year, 7/7/2007, or my lucky number 7. But yeah, that year I got married on, and we would love to eventually have something honoring him. And so far, like in Chehalis, they have a festival once a year honoring my grandfather. But there's been other places that have wanted to have festivals about him too. Um, Pendleton, Oregon, the first place he reported, they almost started a festival honoring his sighting once, but a lot of it has been lost because it was so long ago. So now it's like going on, oh gosh, how many years? 90 years or 80 years? 80 years? Yeah. But anyhow, it's just been so long. But
Yeah, you come out talking about your grandfather much more than your mom, because your mom thinks that the community is really, she did it for me. She did give me an interview, but she went back inside her house after that thinking, no, they gave our family so much trouble that, it's too much of a hassle. So I thank you for coming forward, because the young people need to know. But the fact that you even told me that the light was flickering means that this connection between life and death, that your father was looking at this connection, your grandfather was looking at this connection, and then the light goes off and on, for you was a very clear signal.
oh yeah, definitely. But people that have supposedly seen extraterrestrials say they're sentinel, but I still kind of believe that they're more of like an angel type phenomena. I think they're coming from where we go, from where we go to when we die, and they're back and forth. But some people want to believe that they're from other places in the galaxy. But with studying philosophy, it's made me think pretty deep about reality. And at this point, I almost feel like everything is an illusion, and we do live in the matrix. But just
Well,
I've always been one to question reality.
that's a possibility. I mean, you've gone to the grad school of thinking, because even researchers like Jacques Vallée, who's very well known, believes that it's interdimensional. It's not necessarily interplanetary travelers. That dimensionally we don't know what's going on. They could be here anyway. They could be a part of another world. They could be part of another dimension. We have to leave the door open for all of it. That's why I wrote a book called All of It, all of it, all of the above and beyond. You know, when you're checking boxes in an examination, you're checking boxes, and then at the bottom it says all the above. So I think it's easier to look at this phenomenon as all the above, and it's a possibility. But your grandfather went one step forward because of his connection with his wife, probably, that what he saw had a deeper connection than just nuts and bolts UFOs.
Definitely. There was an instance where he had a reel-to-reel film that somebody in the military, his friend, had given him of a UFO. So he sent it into the government, the highest ranking officials. They cut out the part of the UFO and sent it back and told him there's nothing there. So he got really disillusioned with the government and the answers that he got from them.
Yeah, and of course he was interested in the Maury Island case, which he thought was valid, right?
Okay, so the Maury Island thing definitely did happen. He was a part of it, but it was so high pressure. Ray Palmer of Fate magazine paid my grandfather $200 to fly there and investigate it. My grandfather was mostly excited for meeting Captain E.J. Smith, who was a pilot who saw UFOs over Emmett, Idaho. And the hotel in Tacoma was being tapped, and it scared my grandfather so much. After his friends died in a crash in Kelso, the two military officials that died carrying the UFO supposedly crashed in Kelso, Washington, and they were my grandfather's friends. So he was scared.
They were UFO pieces. They weren't the UFO. They were
Pieces of the UFO. But he was so scared when he left. His fuel line on his airplane was shut off, and he almost crashed. Luckily, he was able to safely land it and turn his fuel line on.
Well, that's very
But
important.
he wanted the whole Maury Island thing.
Yeah, but it's
But
very important. It's important that you're talking about it, because the thing is that you can't just dismiss Maury Island like they have. And you're talking about it because you know your grandfather was involved.
oh yes, and I've talked to a couple that wrote a book about the whole situation. I've learned stuff getting older. I didn't realize he was such a big part until about time I was in my 20s. I had got a UFO book and it mentioned Maury Island and my grandfather, and it just blew me away. But my grandfather is also a character in the book Twin Peaks, which is a Pacific Northwest area show, and they made him a character, honestly. But my grandfather just definitely is thought of a lot when you think of the Seattle area. And our friends in Seattle is lived in Seattle and has friends there. I always get articles every year from Seattle about my grandfather's sighting around the anniversary. But my husband has been very supportive of me being a speaker on my grandfather's behalf. My mother kind of feels like she really can't be a public speaker. She's getting older, and I feel like it's my destiny to be a public speaker about my grandfather, to make him proud. I do have relatives, and they're just so disillusioned by it. They feel like it ruined the family in a way, because it made my family so public. And my aunts were ridiculed in school and made fun of because he thought like no one else thought. Throughout those years, he was not believed even back then. And the Roswell thing wasn't even believed till the late 70s, because it came back to light. But you know, for the longest time, it's like we were evolving to be more open-minded, to know what's really going on in our world. And I feel like what's been going on has always been going on, because of like medieval paintings I've seen of flying saucers um, in the sky, and depictions of Mother Mary and baby Jesus in the same painting. I think that we've forgotten the true meaning of what's really going on. But
Okay, what I'd like to have happen, can you go back just a little bit, because we've got like 3 more minutes. So go back
okay,
just a little bit, and you get a chance to speak to our viewers. What would you like them to know? What would you suggest? What advice would you give to the young people? And because we only have these 3 minutes left, because I really care about what you think, Shanelle. You're young, and you're just coming into this, and what you're so interested that you went out and bought books and started to study it, even though your grandfather is so famous. You started to study all about it. What would you like to say to the young people?
don't trust the government. Think for yourself.
That's what your grandfather said. And
Yeah,
would you be willing to talk to researchers about what and your grandfather could be giving
I
you
definitely
advice
have a
right
lot
now?
to say.
Yeah, your grandfather could be giving you advice even from the other side through now. You would be willing to talk a little bit more with researchers about this.
Oh, definitely. I have a lot. I have a lot to say. I grew up in a very unconditional way. I'm the original ufologist because my grandfather was the first.
Okay, and then we have James Fox's film. So let's just say 2 words about that. James Fox in the film The Phenomena, and I'm interviewing James tonight, really valued your mother's testimony because his film is historical. So you met James. So what can you say about him?
James has the best energy about him. He is so personable. The movie was filmed in a mansion, and I just felt like I was in a dream the whole time, meeting all these famous people, and you know, even meeting Dolores Cannon, who's passed. And I remember just hearing her say, "What if God's a woman?" And I was just like, "Oh, where am I?" You know, I was in the mansion where it was being filmed. It's very interesting. So
And you're
I'm
looking
glad to have
forward,
been a part of that.
and you're looking forward to seeing the film tonight.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the film. Yes, yes. Later today, my mother and I will be streaming it, watching it over here.
Okay, and her mom, Kim Arnold, has a piece in the film as a firsthand witness, and that's basically where you have to go. When you talk to your mom, I am so grateful that she gave me the only interview in the world that's ever been done with your family, because when she gave it to me, I put it in a magazine in Italy. It went
Yeah.
viral in all different languages, and that's really what ufology is the history of what happened with UFOs. So thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Paula. It was a pleasure.
Okay.